Thank you for joining us today for our Strengthening Families monthly webinar. Today we're introducing a new paper from CSSP, expanding the perspectives and research foundation of the Strengthening Families and Youth Thrive frameworks. Those of you who have been Strengthening Families fans for a long time are very excited about this, I know, and I'm thrilled that my coworker Charlyn Harper Browne is with us to present the research she's been doing and give you a sneak peek of this paper, which will be out on our website next week. So with that, I'll give a little bit of grounding in what we are doing here today, in case anyone's confused about where they are. This is our monthly Strengthening Families webinar. This is an open invitation to anyone who's using the Strengthening Families Protective Factors framework or coordinating Strengthening Families efforts or just interested in it. We jointly convene these between my organization, the Center for the Study of Social Policy, and our partners at the Children's Trust Fund Alliance. Each month we have a topic or guest speaker. We coordinate those, but we always welcome volunteers and suggestions. So if you have content to share or there's a great speaker you heard talking about something related to protective factors that you'd like to bring to the network, please let us know. And the recordings and materials from these webinars are always posted at an incredible archive of, I think, 14 years worth of these webinars.
Wow.
Are posted at this site that the Alliance maintains. And so by early next week, you'll be able to find this recording, and you can always browse through there for ones you may have missed in the past. So we do this on the second Thursday of each month at this time. In March, Charlyn will be with us again for another paper we've been working on, along with our co-authors, Jenna Russo, who's with us today, David Willis, and Junlei Lee. And that paper is called Putting Principles into Action, Building an Early Relational Health Ecosystem. So we're excited to share that one in March. And then in April, the second Thursday of the month, we'll be doing something special from noon to 4:30 Eastern. I'll talk more about that at the end. But just to know that will not be our standard webinar time, but hopefully you have that time kind of marked off on your calendar. And of course, we'll do these on the second Thursday of each month going forward. We'll announce the topics as we get closer. And you can subscribe to CSSP's Strengthening Families newsletter by going to really any page on our website at cssp.org. Scroll down to the bottom. There's a button for Stay Informed, Sign Up Now. You can choose which of our newsletters you want to receive. Okay, I'm really excited. I'm a big nerd, and you all know that. We are unveiling today our new look for Strengthening Families. So there's a logo on the slide right now that you have seen for years. I believe this has been the logo since 2009. And today we are unveiling a new one. You see our new color here and the new logo coming into focus. Love to hear what you think of it, what that image evokes for you. 5 dots, perhaps people, perhaps protective factors, perhaps partners around a table working to strengthen families and support families. Love to hear what you think of it. And you will start to see that logo showing up in these webinars and in our materials going forward.
Absolutely.
So today, Charlyn's going to talk about expanding the perspectives, and I wrote that wrong, research foundation of the Strengthening Families and Youth Thrive frameworks. And then I will talk about the upcoming Strengthening Families events and other materials that are coming out soon, and a couple other updates from CSSP. And Maureen Holliker will share updates from the Children's Trust Fund Alliance at the end. So lots to cover in our hour today, and I'm really glad you're all here. I'm going to hand off to Charlyn to talk about the new paper.
Great. Thank you, Kaylin. And I'm excited too. And I'm really excited about getting some feedback from you all about the ideas that are in the paper. So greetings, everyone. I am absolutely delighted to share with you some additional research-based perspectives and evidence that inform both of our seminal frameworks, Strengthening Families and Youth Thrive. Now, as you will see on the next slide, I have a picture of the cover of the new document, and the key word in the title is expanding, because the information described in the report builds on and broadens our knowledge about the challenges children, parents, and families face, and broadens our knowledge about comprehensive ways to promote healthy development and well-being. But so even though the report provides information about both of the 2 protective factors framework, this overview today we'll focus on the strengthening families components of the paper. So let's just go on and get started with that. All of the strengthening families values, and they have been extended some, but all of the values that are listed here drive the thinking in the paper. But three stand out. Three run through everything that's in the paper. The first value that stands out is a statement that we as people who promote, who believe in, and implement the Strengthening Families framework have an ethical obligation to pursue the equitable and just treatment of all children, parents, and families. And so this obligation, the ethical obligation to pursue equity and justice, is implicitly an acknowledgement that individuals and communities have been differentially impacted by conditions, systems, laws, ideologies that have unfairly advantaged some communities and unfairly disadvantaged other communities, which has caused disproportionate harm. So that's a idea that goes throughout the paper. The second value relates to an expanded perspective about building protective factors. The original explanations about how to build protective factors primarily focused on individual and relational characteristics. The new report highlights the importance of focusing on community and societal characteristics and conditions, in addition to individual and relational. Community and societal characteristics like cultural, economic, policy, systemic, and again, ideological factors that promote or threaten the protective factors. And the third value that runs throughout the paper and the thinking that went into the paper is the importance of considering culture. We see culture as an overarching protective factor. Now, we've always said that the protective factors are universal in that they describe factors that are essential for the well-being of all children, parents, and families, yet they may be understood and implemented in culturally specific ways. So we, as a overarching when we say that culture is an overarching protective factor, we believe that culture influences how resilience is demonstrated, the nature of social connections, what knowledge is acquired and how it's acquired, the expression of social and emotional competence, and the type of concrete support and care that is both sought and provided. Culture influences all of that. So let's look at some of the definitions, the expanded definitions of the protective factors. The definitions are just that, expanded versions of the original definitions. No major change are made, and they are listed here. But I'm gonna talk about each one individually. So let's look at the need to redefine. Why we are stating that we needed to redefine resilience. The long-standing common definition of resilience that you find in most of the research is positive adaptation despite adversity. And that word adaptation becomes a significant term. Positive adaptation usually refers to adjustments that individuals have to make to cope with stress and adversity. But sometimes when others tell us to positively adapt to something, what they really mean is positively adjust to the adversity. For example, the studies have shown that Black girls and women tend to experience disproportionately high levels of racism, sexism, and discrimination in school or in the workplace. And often in response to their concerns about experiencing racism, sexism, and discrimination, they're often encouraged to develop thick skin, and you're too sensitive, and to ignore their mistreatment in order to get along with other people and be accepted by other people. Yet the racist, sexist, and discriminatory conditions remain unchanged. So that's a distorted form of adaptation. Also, the definition positive adaptation despite adversity suggests that resilience is situated, as they say, within the individual and dependent upon whether the person has the inner strength to cope with difficult circumstances. And if they do not possess the personal strength or do not put forth sufficient effort, then it's their fault for not being resilient and not achieving positive outcomes. But given the feedback that we've received from parents and our wonderful strengthening families thought partners that were part of our listening sessions in 2023, and I'm sure that there are some of y'all in the audience, and I just want to say thank you for doing all that hard work. But given the feedback that we've received from our thought partners and parents, as well as an increasing number of resilience researchers, we no longer see resilience as an individual matter. Instead, we emphasize that the need to address factors across all levels of the social ecology that help to build or undermine resilience. And so we expand the definition. We have expanded the definition of resilience to read, again, still not saying adaptation because it can have that negative undertone. Managing stress and functioning well, not just by the individual, facilitated by individual, relational, community, and societal factors when faced with stressors, adversity, and trauma. Now, within the paper, there are several examples of how factors that facilitate resilience at each one of these levels, but I won't go into those right now, but they are described in the paper. Two additional topics that fall under the heading of resilience that are discussed are post-traumatic growth and resistance as a form of resilience. Now, regarding post-traumatic growth, sometimes as people who experience, when people experience significant stressors and traumatic events, they try to manage their adverse circumstances. They also engage in self-reflection. They might engage in self-reflection. This does not always happen, and it's okay if it doesn't happen. But as they're trying to manage their adverse experiences, some individuals might also engage in self-reflection, trying to figure out what can they learn from this experience. If and when positive change occurs as a result of this self-reflection, this self-examination, this is what is often called post-traumatic growth. It's not guaranteed that happens. It doesn't have to happen, and it can still happen as the person is still struggling with the adverse circumstances. Post-traumatic growth can occur in various ways and can be observed in various ways, like an increased sense of hope when you have felt hopeless, improved problem solving and coping skills, and having more meaningful and valuable relationships. But we don't need to get this twisted about what post-traumatic growth is, because a friend of mine, a colleague, shared with me that yesterday that some people in their state try to use the idea of post-traumatic growth to justify the benefits of the 246 years of enslavement of African peoples by saying, well, see, look at how much better you all turned out to be. That's not only ridiculous, it's a misuse of the term completely. So when I say let's not get it twisted, post-traumatic growth, it does not justify any type of trauma or traumatic experience. But there can be growth as a result of the reflection and the thoughtful thought that people put, that occurs sometimes, either through relationships that people have, either through therapy, any of that. Another topic that's a part of the resilience section is looking at resistance as an act of resilience. Now, resistance typically refers to different forms of pushing back against traumatic or oppressive experiences rather than adjusting to traumatic or oppressive experiences. Remember the example that I gave about Black girls and women being encouraged to ignore their mistreatment that they experience at school or in the workplace? Often a different response is to resist the mistreatment by speaking up, demanding to be heard, and refusing to remain invisible. I just need to put a caveat there. People have to decide when it's best and when it's not best to resist. So if there's always risk with resistance, but you also have to decide if this goes against my principles if I don't resist. So it's not something. I mean, it's something that people have to struggle with. Resistance should be viewed. We believe that resistance should be viewed when it occurs as a form of resilience that challenges adversity rather than adapting or adjusting to it. And clearly, research has shown that various forms of resistance, standing up for what you believe, is contributes to mental health. It benefits mental health and well-being. Now, resistance is commonly thought of as pushing back against external forces, but resistance can also mean pushing back against challenging internal forces, like fatigue and depression, etc. And what people recommend is that you when you resist internally, it's about self-care, taking care of yourself so you can be available again tomorrow. To paraphrase Audre Lorde, caring for oneself, which is often something that we don't do enough of. Caring, particularly as women, caring for oneself is not self-indulgence, it's self-preservation, and also is considered to be an act of resistance. So let's not forget ourselves in the equation when we're talking about growing and developing. The next protective factor that I just want to briefly address is this notion of social connection. You already know that social connections refer to healthy, sustained relationships with people, with institutions, with the community, or with a higher power. The expanded definition that we have about social connection elevates certain things, and two of the internal senses that are elevated are a sense of belonging and a sense of mattering. It's more, social connections is not just about people and being connected to something. It's about being connected to things to someone, something that engenders a sense of belonging, a sense of mattering. Belonging is commonly conceived as feeling that you are welcomed and accepted by your surroundings, whether it's your family, friends, work environments, cultural groups, identity groups, whatever. There's lots of evidence that suggests that having a sense of belonging has absolutely positive effects on not only on your identity and your self-worth, but your overall mental health. In contrast, feeling excluded, feeling ignored, and rejected can cause all kinds of mental health issues like anxiety, depression, and loneliness. Now, mattering, many times people use mattering and belonging as though they're the same, but they're not. Mattering refers to a person's perception that other people are concerned about what happens to them and appreciate them. And we see these as valuable outcomes of social connections that we want to elevate in importance. Young children for young children, feeling that they matter is extremely important. Young children who don't feel that they matter are less likely to thrive. And in general, people who believe that they matter tend to feel validated for who they are fully and totally without judgment. And that's one of the indicators that you matter, that you are not, you are accepted without judgment. Recent research points to another aspect of mattering that may be new to you. researchers have shown that it's not enough just to feel seen and appreciated, but to fully matter, people need to feel like they can make a contribution to other people, to other things, to that they have something to give. And that becomes very important, that I matter in that way. I'm not just on the receiving end. I can also contribute to myself and to other people. So whether or not an individual feels that they matter is central to how they view themselves and their lives. Again, studies indicate that individuals who have a strong sense of mattering, again, have better mental health, experience positive self-concept, well-being, etc. In contrast, individuals who do not have a sense of mattering tend to experience high levels of depression and job-related or academic stress. Additional topics that are listed or described under social connections are early relational health and community connectedness. Now, early relational health, which we'll talk about next month, refers to this state of emotional well-being that develops from a strong emotional connection between young children and their caregivers, parents, and other caregivers. And when they experience this attentive, responsive, consistent interactions with each other. These experiences, early relational health experiences, communicate to young children that they matter and help to lay a foundation for healthy development and well-being, not only in early childhood, but it can last across the lifespan. The very important thing about early relational health is that it's beneficial to both the young child and the caregivers that they are interacting with. Both of them have a enhanced sense of well-being. And also, early relational health has, studies show that early relational health supports healthy brain development and helps to mitigate the negative effects that stress that families might experience. So again, this is a relatively new construct that we feel is extremely important in talking about social connections. And then community connectedness. This refers to healthy, protective relationships between individuals and their key environments, whether it's the neighborhoods, social organizations that they're connected with. And again, studies show that individuals who have some type of community, connected to some type of community, tend to be healthier and happier. And all of these kinds of social connections tend to protect people from or mitigate the adverse effects of stresses. So all of these aspects of social connection that are highlighted in the new paper, along with the things that we've talked about already, underscore the importance of implementing strategies when we work with parents and families, of implementing strategies that enable both children and their parents to have opportunities to build these healthy, protective, safe, equitable, and sustainable social connections. We want them to be long-term kinds of relationships. The fourth protective factor is knowledge of parenting and child development. And one of the new pieces in that definition is learning about prenatal development, and in addition to infant and child development, and also using developmentally and contextually appropriate parenting practice. And I'll speak to why we added prenatal in just a moment. But as it relates to knowledge of parenting, one of the things that we assert is that parenting, and this is just not our assertion, this is supported by research, that parenting is a cultural act. And although children have some needs that are universal, that all children need, such as nurturance and protection and attention and early relational health, how parents address these needs can be culturally specific. Culture has a major influence on parents' beliefs, their values, their definitions, the behaviors even that they consider to be appropriate or inappropriate. Yet, even though we have all kinds of research that supports the notion that parenting is a cultural act, too often parenting research and recommended best practices have been dominated by studies that proceed as though parenting is basically the same across all cultures, and it certainly is not. Using a single cultural lens when we talk about parenting ignores or minimizes the depth, the valuable differences in diverse cultures, and how they understand their role as their role, responsibilities, and practices as a parent. So we really have to. It's important to ask parents to identify the conditions and circumstances that facilitate the help them as parents, and facilitate the building of our of the different protective factors. In this way, efforts to help parents build their protective factors will be better aligned with their own personal, family, or culture's definition of parenting and the protective factors. So we just need to ask them, what does this mean for you? The next construct that's discussed under knowledge of parenting is this thing called good enough parenting. No parent is a perfect parent, and the researchers, particularly psychologists, say you shouldn't even strive to try to be perfect because you'll be frustrated. The best we can do is to be good enough, but good enough. Be careful. Good enough does not mean mediocre parenting. Instead, it refers to efforts to make reflective. I'm thinking about this and thinking about the consequences if I do this, if I don't do this. It refers to efforts to make reflective and responsible decisions that meet a child's current needs and helps them to be on a pathway toward healthy development and well-being. Now, what constitutes good enough parenting, again, is contextual with respect to a particular individual, respect to their family values, the cultural values, community, and even the societal circumstances and resources they have. We can't just judge. Look at something going on with a parent. Many times people have looked at parents who might snatch a child up and just like look at them with scornfully, but that snatching them up might have just saved their lives for some reason, so about something that was happening. So we really have to know the context within which certain parenting behaviors occur before we can say whether it's good parenting or not. Good enough parenting, the thing that good enough parenting, although there's no single thing that's called good enough parenting, good enough parenting does prioritize building and sustaining a strong relationship. Again, early relational health with one's child. Basically, the quality of the parent-child relationship is what is regarded as more important than any particular parenting practice or skill. When I read that, that was just like eye-opening for me. The quality of that relationship, not a particular practice or a particular skill other than loving the child, is what's most important. Now, as it relates to knowledge of child development, once again, you see in our expanded definition is knowledge of prenatal development. Research consistently shows that the prenatal period and the first 3 years of life are the most sensitive for the developing child's brain and early childhood developmental, all other developmental outcomes. Although the prenatal period has always been of concern in the Strengthening Families framework, has always been like implicitly a concern, given the long-term developmental implications of this period, as well as the persisting racial and ethnic, maternal and child health disparities that are just out of control right now. Strengthening Families now elevates attention to this period and redefines the range of its target population. All along we've been saying birth. At first we said birth to 5, But now, and then that changed from birth to 8 years old. But now we're saying we have to consider the prenatal developing child, because what happens in prenatally is so very important for later development. The prenatal developing child to 8 years old and their families. So prenatal development is elevated in our new thinking about strengthening families. And then this other aspect of knowledge of child development, it relates to positive childhood experiences. We are all aware of the research on the impact of adverse childhood experiences. So, but in addition to these ACEs, the Strengthening Families framework supports the growing emphasis on shifting from a singular focus on ACEs to integrating a focus on providing positive experience for children. You can be done in many ways, helping them to foster healthy relationships, to the environments that they're in, putting them in healthy environments. Positive childhood experiences build a sense of connectedness, belonging, and mattering. And new research shows that positive childhood experiences can predict all kinds of positive outcomes and influence, not only just mental health, but the structure and functioning of the developing brain. The positive childhood experiences help to establish a strong foundation for learning and learning the ability to not learning to thrive, but and also thriving. In contrast, studies show that the absence of positive childhood experiences can result in the young brain being exposed to an abundance of stress hormones that negatively impact how it develops. Now, of course, it's not possible to always avoid negative experiences, but positive childhood experiences can help to mitigate the impact of those negative experiences on children. So we still say we have to focus on positive childhood experiences too. The next one, social and emotional competence of children. Our expanded definition focuses on providing environments and experiences. Once again, we elevate the role of early relational health. So these early environments and experiences are grounded in early relational health. And these experiences are those that build positive social skills, enable children to regulate thoughts, emotions, behavior. All of those social and emotional competencies come out of these environment and experiences that children receive. It's well established that acquiring social and emotional skills is extremely important, and that those skills impact all other developmental domains and lays the foundation for later development. So there's a discussion of putting all of those different social emotional skills and calling them core life skills. That's discussed in there, but you're already familiar with those competencies. But in addition to that, in that section we elevate the importance of self-advocacy. Again, going outside of just the individual stuff and going to elevating this issue around self-advocacy. The Strengthening Family Framework emphasizes that in order for parents to use their voice and their power, and we definitely say that voice without power is really not voice. And so parents need voice and power, and to use it in the most effective ways. And in order to do that, self-advocacy skills, we need to focus on helping parents develop or enhance their self-advocacy skills. And when we talk about those abilities, we're talking about speaking up for oneself, knowing one's legal rights, being able to really honestly look at your own strengths and limitations, being aware of power dynamics in various different situations that you were in, and knowing when to say uncle, knowing when to reach out to other people, knowing when you need some help, and seeing help as a part, asking for help seeking behavior is like self-advocacy. as opposed to a sign of weakness. One researcher stated that self-advocacy is more than knowing or communicating your needs. I love the second sentence. He said it's also about knowing your worth and making your worth known. And I just think, we don't think about that often when we talk about self-advocacy. It's more than just going out there and saying, this is what I or my child or my community needs. No, we know the worth of me, the worth of my child, the worth of my community, and making it known. And so researchers and practitioners emphasize the importance of teaching self-advocacy skills to parents to enable them to become aware of and gain confidence and make decisions by speaking on their own behalf or their child's behalf. The last little thing the last issue under social emotional competence, I need to give some background to first. As you can see here, this is one of the many professional organizations that have declared that racism is a significant threat to child and family well-being, and that they perceive it as declare it as a public health matter. For example, a policy statement that was issued in 2019 by the American Academy of Pediatrics, as you can see here, indicated that racism is a social determinant of health that has profound impact on the health status of children, adolescents, emerging adults, and their families. And failure to address racism will continue to undermine health equity for all children, adolescents, emerging adults, and their families. Similarly, in addition to these professional organizations declaring it, the researchers at various different institutions, in particular the one that's highlighted on the next slide is the Center on the Developing Child, that these researchers and other researchers have investigated the impact of racism on child development. This is something that you really need to get your hands on and look at. But even with all of this information, these professional organizations, these research institutions, looking at the impact of racism on child and family development, even with all of this, racism is rarely a topic of focus in programs and interventions for children and parents. And so one strategy that can counteract that, one strategy that we can take on is this thing called racial socialization, which is actually an aspect of social and emotional learning and competence, which is why it's under this category. Racial socialization refers to the process of the process through which beliefs, I'm trying to look at something, through which beliefs, ideas, values, social norms about race, racism, ethnicity, oppression, in which they are transmitted and also in which they are adopted. Children and adults with high levels of positive racial socialization are willing to listen to, understand, and learn from, and also appreciate the perspectives of ethnically and racially diverse individuals. And they're willing to build healthy relationships with people from diverse backgrounds. Now, racial socialization studies have shown that too often racial socialization involves teaching children to be colorblind, teaching them to treat everyone the same, teaching them that race doesn't really matter. That's not true. that's just, we might wish that was the case, but it is not. So racial socialization has to be beyond that. We have to talk about have these difficult conversations if we want things to change. We assert that it's essential to integrate into strengthening families' practice research-based findings about the impact of racism, research-based findings about the negative impact of having a colorblind attitude and not talking about racial socialization, as well as integrating into practice proactive strategies that have been used by many people to navigate life effectively within conditions of racism. strengthening families practitioners, really, we have to take the lead in being prepared to intentionally discuss these issues with children, youth, and parents of all races. This is not just for Black, Latina, Asian American, Indigenous families. This is for all families, white families too. And to understand and recognize proactively respond to racism that you even may be experiencing, or your constituents. So it goes without saying that this work is hard and this work is challenging. And so part of what we have to do but it is essential. So part of what we have to do is to get training. We have to be trained on how to talk with parents and children about this. But it's essential. One researcher wrote that if we are to progress in this country, it's going to be because we help our children, adolescents, and young adults learn not just that racism exists, but that it is something all of us can work together to dismantle. The last protective factor is concrete support, and I'm not going to say much about that because it's the definitions is pretty much the same. What's discussed under this is about social determinants of health, again, across the social ecology, the importance of cross-system and cross-sector collaboration, and then collaborative goal setting, that pulling all of that into the provision of concrete support. So I'm going to stop right there, and I'm sorry I went a little long, but
please,
I apologize.
do not apologize at all.
Okay,
this was wonderful definitions and explanation. I do wonder if you could comment on the shorter name of this protective factor that's on the slide right now, and then we'll get to the questions.
Okay, that's right. We are calling it just concrete support rather than concrete support in times of need. At some point, we had an epiphany that's a little redundant. Concrete. When else would you need concrete support if not in times of need? And as Kaylin said before everybody joined, life. How did you put it, Kaylin?
Life is a time of need.
That life is a time of need. So we all need concrete support in various different ways all the time at some point. And sometimes the concrete support is just going to sleep. Getting in your bed, pulling the covers over your head. I'll deal with it. Scarlett O'Hara I'll deal with it tomorrow. So now we're just saying concrete support. We don't put the in times of need on there. So that's that.
Great. Okay. So we do have a couple questions that have come in.
Okay.
And we have looking for my clock here. We have 5 or 6 minutes for some, briefly address some of these questions. And I also know that Yolan typed actually 2 really interesting comments in that. Yolan, if you want to prepare to unmute and speak to that, otherwise I can read the chat that you put in earlier. But let's go first to the comment or question that Casey Langley put in. Casey asks, a few years ago, you all put out a 2-pager core meanings of the Strengthening Families Protective Factors that I use all the time in my work. Will you be developing a similar short, handy resource with these expanded definitions?
Oh, you said something that was going to be a treat. Yes, indeed, we are doing that. And we are pulling out different sections to make them one pagers, like the racial socialization, there were a couple of other sections in there that we didn't talk about, about culture as an overarching protective factor. So we will have a one pager like front and back on each protective factor, on culture, on well-being, on all those things. So yes,
and I think we should put that core meanings document on our docket to see what needs to be updated to that nice succinct summary. Okay. Let's see if Yolan, I'm gonna see if you want to unmute yourself. Oops, did I?
Hello?
I lost Yolan on the list. Here she is.
I'm here.
Hello.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Greetings, everyone, and thank you so much for this, Dr. Browne.
You're quite welcome.
You very much, and we co-presented.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for keeping on, right?
Okay, thank you.
When when you were speaking about resiliency, I was wondering whether your expanded version is including to the contribution that many cultures bring
Oh,
when
absolutely.
we have it knocked out of them that they should behave certain way.
Yeah.
And I was giving an example of the work that I have been doing for the past 35 years in reciprocity, in
Mm-hmm.
engaging parents as contributors. So that was my point.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that definitely is part of the resiliency, and it helps them to feel that they're not takers, but they're also contributors.
Absolutely. You're right. You're absolutely on top of things. Yes. Yes, that's in there. And as I said, the role of culture and respecting and finding out about people's culture and what resilience means in your culture and how you demonstrate it, all of that's underscored throughout the paper. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. And I'm so glad to hear your voice.
Yeah.
It's been a while. It's so glad to hear your
Hopefully
voice.
we'll see each other in person one of these days.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I hope so soon. You
Thank you,
don't
Yolan.
know what this is doing for me. I hope we can capture what's in the chat. So,
Yes,
um,
absolutely. So
okay.
many
Mm-hmm.
positive comments in the chat. We do have
Mm-hmm.
another question from
Sure.
Courtney. How can we consider all of these factors, cultural, parenting, social, racial socialization, et cetera, when it comes to the racial disproportionality in the child welfare system? I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to summarize a little with higher rates of investigation, removal, termination, as advocates fight to end the carceral system and family policing laws and policies.
Oh my gosh. That's
How
one of
does
the
this?
deepest questions I've ever heard. Oh my goodness. Let me just say, I don't know how best to answer that. I'm going to because I'm not a child welfare person. So I'm going to ask if Susan is still on the phone, Susan Notkin or Kaylin, can you all contribute to this whole thing related to child welfare and how this might connect there?
Absolutely. Let me, Susan should be able to unmute now if you want to, but in the meantime, I will say I think it's entirely connected. I think the more we can talk about all of these important issues and how they help families thrive, that is making it less likely that they will have the kinds of struggles that we're trying to that we're supposed to be addressing in the child welfare system. But it also, when we talk about these issues within the child welfare system, should reduce that disproportionality of, the bias that goes into those decision-making processes. And I think there's a lot more conversation about, I mean, that's more than another webinar to get into that. But I think I would just want to say, I think part of what we're doing with strengthening families is trying to build up the systems and communities that need to exist and be family driven and community centered that would allow for, much less or no engagement with the child welfare system, so that there are other ways that families get the support they need. And acknowledging all of these, the importance of culture and racial socialization all comes into that. And the reciprocity that Yolan mentioned, it's all connected to that. And I could ramble on, but I'll stop talking.
Is Susan, if you're still on, did you want to add to that?
I do see our colleague from CSSP, Martha Raymond, just wrote in the
Oh,
chat, shrinking child welfare systems will help to reduce disparities and disproportionality as well.
okay.
Which
Okay,
the
great.
less people are coming through that door, the less we're going to have those
Yeah.
issues.
I didn't see
Thank
Martha
you.
on here. Yeah. Thank you, Martha. Let me add something about the 1 or 2 pages that we are going to submit. Roger Sherman asked a question about if it's should we say something about destigmatizing, asking for help under concrete support. The answer to that is yes. And what we are doing with those 1 or 2 pages is combining the original research that we had, and we talked about help seeking behavior in that 2014 document, and we're pulling together all of that. So these new ones will will merge all of the research, these new the existing, and then some of the new research that's coming out in this paper. So yes, Roger, yeah, we will be talking about that.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Absolutely.
And I see there are a couple more questions in the chat. Or in the Q&A. I need to move us into the rest of our content so we don't miss anything. But if any of the other Charlyn or other hosts and panelists are able to chat in some responses to those questions, please do. And I think we will move on. I wanted to share some other exciting things that are coming up soon. So more Strengthening Families content coming soon. So on our website next week, you will be able to find this paper that Charlyn has been talking about and which reflects her work over the last year, as well as what we heard from listening sessions and all of the input over the years from those of you who are out there training and using and talking about strengthening families. It's all filled into how this paper came together. So thank you all for that. And so that paper will be coming out. In a minute, we'll have an opportunity for you to say if you want to receive an email when that paper is live. It will also go out on our usual newsletters and everything. And then in the coming months, you will see, as Charlyn mentioned, updated research briefs on each protective factor, additional research briefs about some of the topics that are in the paper that are brief in the paper will be longer in their standalone pages. Core functions of implementation, which those of you who lead efforts for your states or communities or agencies may refer to those core functions, and a lot more supporting materials. And so we will be releasing those as they come, and you will see the new logo on materials that are new, and we'll try to update those as we can. I loved the comment about the core meanings of the protective factors. If there are other things that you use frequently that you think should be at the top of our list for updating, please put that in the chat or send me an email. Because as you may know from our website, there are hundreds of documents about strengthening families, and we are trying to prioritize which ones get updated first, and hopefully we'll get them all updated before too long. Very excited to share that we have a virtual mini summit coming up on April 11th. So I mentioned this is on the second Thursday of April. So hopefully a time that you maybe would have spent with us anyway, but a longer time. You'll be able to learn more about the research behind the new paper. We'll have some discussion panels with Strengthening Families partners and state leads. You'll have interaction opportunities with other members of the network. It won't be quite as glorious as our summits that we were able to do in the past, but we are excited to bring all the Strengthening Families people together and spend that time really diving in to the work. So please mark your calendars now. We will get registration information out soon. We will be charging a $100 registration fee. There will be a group discount, which we're still figuring out the details of. There will be parent leader scholarships available, and recordings will be available afterwards if you register. So I'm really hoping we can bring our community together, our network that has been not together for a while. We'll do it virtually, but we're really looking forward to that and hope that many of you will be able to join us. And Jenna is actually going to put a poll up now where you can enter your email address if you'd like to get the notification as soon as that, as soon as the paper comes out. And also when the registration details for the virtual mini summit are available. This is also where you can put in your email if you'd like to get a certificate for your participation in today's webinar. In other webinars, we've done that as a separate form you had to fill out, but hopefully this will work. It's a test. So if you do need a certificate that you participated today, please enter your email there and we'll get you a certificate next week by email. While that poll is up, I'm still going to move through our other updates. I just want to share that we are planning for the Together for Families conference. That'll be in October, also a virtual conference. Please save the dates now. More information will be out soon. It is a truly international conference. We have a new co-host, so along with the National Family Support Network in the US and Families Canada and CSSP, we now also have co-hosts at the National Family Support Forum from Ireland. So we're going across the pond and spreading over some more time zones, and it's going to be a great conference to have more of our Irish colleagues with us, and looking forward to many of you joining us for that as well. Also just wanted to share a new paper from CSSP, Culture is Healing. You see a quote on your screen. I'm rushing through it because I do need to give Maureen a few minutes for her updates as well. So Let me hand off to Maureen Holliker from the Children's Trust Fund Alliance.
Excellent. Thanks, Kaylin, and thanks, Charlyn. That was incredible presentation, and we're really excited about the expansion of the framework. We are working hard to integrate the expansion into our training of trainers. A lot of the areas that the paper has gone in have really reflect the conversations that we've been having in the last few years in our training. So we're really excited about that. Our next training of trainers is coming up in April 15th through the 18th. And I will put information in the chat box on how you can register or receive more information about that. And also a notification that this month is National Parent Leadership Month. And it is, I think, the 20th year of National Parent Leadership Month. And so I will put in the chat also